Good evening. So it's BlackShadow here, and I want to use this video to kind of address, I think, a couple of issues that are slightly dogging parts of the online community for Dune Imperium. This is not trying to slag anyone off or anything like that. Generally, it's a pretty good place to be. But there are some issues that are rearing their head, and I think they need to be addressed in a more public fashion so people can kind of confront it and look to deal something with it. And this is partially the fact that there's obviously a lot of change at the moment, things going bits and pieces on. One of those does involve myself pretty damn heavily, and I'll get to that later on in the video, but the first thing I want to talk about is clocks. So, for those of you who aren't particularly aware, for whatever reason... Oh, by the way, this video is going to be basically just me here. There'll be occasionally maybe some images around here, something like that, to help you better explain my situation, but it's going to largely just be this, so sorry about the paint cans in the background. So yes, the first thing that I don't know, clocks online were introduced not too long ago, and the idea behind that was that when Cheeseball was holding his one-day competitions, Mardi Melees, a way was needed to try and ensure that games were kept to a reasonably sort of tightish manner so that we could actually do a competition in one day, because, you know, Dune Imperium games aren't the quickest going in the world. So clocks were introduced, the idea of having given them like a 20-minute time bank, and that was an incentive to try and keep players from not taking too long, because sometimes you can get into some really tricky spots and it can be left for a while thinking about decisions. But it was done more from an organizational standpoint, and I think it was generally fine. I think we may have had like one or two people that went over 20 minutes, but I think that's about it. Generally, it's fine. 20 minutes is plenty of time, realistically. And it's morphed in its use. It's gone from there, it was used kind of an organizational reason. Some people then, obviously, it was integrated into the mod, so people then started integrating it into, like, obviously, just their general playing, getting a feel for how long they're kind of taking overall decisions and games and that. But the problem that's happening is that these clocks have now found their way into the rank system that Cheeseball does. And I do think that this is actually creating an issue on a couple of fronts. The main thing, and this is something that I have realized in the past couple of days, because we've done a lot of ranks, I did an 8-hour stream of just playing ranked games, I played some ranked games before, is that it seems that people are getting a lot less patient with each other. And we noticed this. We had a game on stream where I was in a tricky spot with, I think it was Paul Atreides. I think it was just the first round. I was just trying to think, because I knew what the next card's going to be, whether to get involved in combat. And I was having my clock pinged, I was having my board pinged. This happened in another game the previous day as well. First, second round in a game. It's completely ridiculous. And I think people are getting very impatient with each other. Now that there's these clocks about, there's an expectation people should be going faster and faster, sort of thing. Which seems to go against the whole ethos of having a rank system, because surely in a ranked game you want people to try and make the best decisions they can. So if you're putting them on time pressure, then they're not able to do that. The second issue, which I think is also as important here, is the fact that there's nothing in the rank rules that Cheeseball set out ever that says anything about clocks. You can go back and look at his various announcements, and I've looked at them, and in no point in any of that have I seen anything saying that clocks should be used. I think there's been a point said where they can be put on there, but they're just simply not enforceable. And so the problem that you're having is it's not often, but it has an occasion. Again, I've seen this twice in 2 days now, where players are putting ranked X clocks and are holding players to that, to the point that the insinuation is if you go beyond that you're going to be penalized somehow, you're going to be disqualified, forced into a reveal, which is completely ridiculous, and you can't do that. And I would dare anyone to actually try that, and then the person to then appeal that and see where that goes. I would wish them good luck with that. But I think there's a more general thing, is that people are getting a lot less patient with people. They're expecting things to go faster. And it's becoming a bit of a turnoff, I think, for some folks, and it's kind of breeding a degree of exclusion for some folks. And you think to newer players that are trying to get involved in the community, that are still learning the game, that are learning TTS, they're going to take longer playing games, and ultimately you always need more people coming into a community so it can grow and it can keep going. You can't live off the same amount. Now, I get it, if you're going to set a lobby that is, say, Dune, Ixim, or whatever else, play quickly. A variant of that originally was the experience-only stuff, which I absolutely hated for the above reasons. And it still happens a little bit, but, people just need to calm down. It's ridiculous to be, pinging people's boards and their clocks second round because they're in the middle of a decision. Some games are simpler than others. You know, you play like Beast or Baron or whatever else. You're generally your first few turns are usually pretty obvious, but you're playing a laser, you're playing Paul, you know, that sort of thing. It's a lot more of a complicated game. Ariana, a lot of the lesser used leaders are a lot more complicated and need more time to try and make those right decisions, because the decisions you make have huge incoming consequences thrown down the line, and you've got to be aware of that. So this is a general circle of people to please stop harassing other people in game, and just because you put a lobby that says ranked X clocks on it does not give you the excuse or reason to berate others and be impatient. I would also say on the other side that if someone like is in just a casual game and says like 15 minutes, try not to take like half an hour on your game. But when it comes to ranked stuff, until it's decreed otherwise achievable, there is no rules over overclocks. And there's nothing enforceable. You can set it as like a guideline, but if someone wants to take a while, ultimately, they're going to be able to do that, and I think trying to exclude people for taking longer is ultimately just going to cause detriment to the system. And that's already something that it's a slightly bit tricky anyways, because with any system, overall, anything like this sort of thing, there has to be standardization. And that's the other issue that the clocks getting into ranked is having, is that there is currently, it's not Cheeseable's fault, I'm not blaming him at all, but what you've got is there's different interpretations going on. You've got ranked games, you've got ranked games that says ranked clocked, you've got ranked clocks X minutes sort of thing. And the problem is that these are almost slightly different feels to each other, but they're all contributing to the same system. So you could have someone who plays just ranked games, whatever else, and they just crack on with it. And you've got someone who plays exclusively these ranked 15 minutes, where they're being held to that time limit, and they're both in the same system. And the problem is, you've got one person who's playing constantly under a specific time pressure, and another person that isn't, and they're both in the same system, and they're both under the same point structure, and that's not healthy. That's not a good place to be. So I think, like, if you want to have clocks in a ranked game, fine. There's no stopping you doing that, but they're not enforceable, and it shouldn't be suggested that they're enforceable. It's just my opinion. And I would say it's backed up the fact that at no point has people said, like, these ranked games are played to X time limit. Competitions will be sometimes, fine. The one-day comps definitely need to be for various reasons. Maybe in the future there'll be like a particular, like a timed league or something where everyone plays to like 15 minutes or 12 minutes, some kind of blitz fashion, whatever else. But it just doesn't exist in this game. And the problem with that is some people's games are just way more complicated to play than others. You could play as the same leader twice in a row and have a very straightforward game, and the next one, it doesn't account for the first game went 7 rounds, this one went 9, and you're constantly like having to work out what intrigues do people have, which alliance do I go for? Do I make a punt for this card in the Imperium? Is it going to get atomics? Do I go for this? There's such a diverse game. There's so much going on. So people do need to calm down. And the one other thing I'll talk about this is, I actually went and looked at the boxes. So this is my Immortality box, which came from Canada. Got this one over in Toronto. And I will point out that on the back of the box, right there, you can see that it says, wonderful players, and then time limit suggested is 60 to 120 minutes. It says that on all the boxes. Now, that's a pretty wide variance, which I think reflects the fact that there is a lot of wide variance in this game. You see it in the competition videos that we do, that some games like do go pretty quick. You know, you get some comp games that go in like about an hour, 5-10 minutes. And we've had a couple of comp games that go way longer than that. This is obviously a mix of the people that are playing it. Some people are just quicker than others. If you're in a server, that's the one thing as well. One of the games I was in, I was getting berated at for being too slow. The host of the lobby was on the other side of the planet, so everything I do is slower. I can't just grab, move over. I've got to grab, wait for it to take it, tell me that it's picked it up, send the feedback to it. All right, then I've got to move it. I've got to wait for it to do that, send that, and everything takes so much longer. So people just need to please chill out. Stop having a go at people for people taking long. And ultimately, like, if you're expecting games to be done in an hour, only an hour, maybe you need to find a different game. I'm just putting that out there. You need to be a bit more considerate to your fellow players. As an aside, I have seen in the conversations a couple of folks saying that they once played like a 2.5 hour game, and that's like jaded them. They just don't want to get involved with games there's no clocks anymore because they're scared of that happening again. I think a lot of us have probably had those games. I would imagine that whenever we first played this game, it was probably a 2.5, 3 hour game. Obviously, that's a little bit different to kind of what obviously they're saying, like being just a general game and it going that long. And obviously, that's not particularly ideal, and that's not an experience that you want to go through again, because some people don't have the time for that. Some people lose a lot of focus and interest, but we've all been there. So it's a bit difficult here. It is human nature to have one overwhelming negative experience and for it to resonate a lot more deeply than, say, 15, 20 positive ones. You know, you think all the other games where you played, it was all well and good, and it was fine, maybe you played some good moves, got a couple of wins, but, like, in a big gaming session, that one game where things felt completely out of your control, like, resonates a lot more. This is something that I can definitely attest to, not just with Dune Imperium. I used to play Dead by Daylight, a fair amount a couple or so years ago. It was the exact same thing. You could play like 3-4 hours of games, and like you can have like objectively a pretty good session, but that one game where things were really bad just stick out to you beyond all else. And it's just human nature. It's just how we're wired. We're wired to do that as a way of training our mind and our body, you know, to react to that, to be prepared. It's self-preservation. It kind of eventually starts boiling down to. But again, like, you can't just use one example of one thing that's happened and then just stick to that and just refuse to move on from it. And this is, of course, something that I know very, very well. Okay, then. So it's time to talk about Game H of Group B of the Salt Throne Tournament. Now, I know there are some folks that were watching this that have no idea what I'm talking about, and there's going to be a few folks watching this, and a few folks that I hope are watching this video, that know exactly what I'm about to talk about. I've never gone on record and talked about this publicly, but now is the time to do so. To get the facts in place before we get into anything else like that, so everyone's off the same page. This was the penultimate group game in Group B. Featured myself, Cheesable, Dinosaur, and I think Che Guevara, if memory serves me correctly. We were all obviously competing to try and make the knockouts. Some of us had better chance than others. I had like a very outside chance. I needed to win the game and results to go my way, but there was a chance to get there. And ultimately, while having had a pretty tough game and pretty much every dice roll that I could have rolled when the coin flips just went wrong, into the 7th round, being completely miles behind the game and everyone else, I open revealed and just gave my turn up because I was completely out of it and I was mentally gone. Now, the day after this happened, I went and put myself on camera. I was not asked to do this. I chose to do it of my own volition, much like this own video and me saying this. No one set me up to do this. This is all off my own back, my own volition, because it's time to get this out in the open and clear some elephants in the room. Whether some people give a shit about me actually attempting to do that or not, I don't know, but I'm going to try. The day afterwards, I went and did a video of my own volition when I was not in a good place. But I sat on a camera for about 6.5 minutes, and I apologized for what I did. That video will be linked below, so you can see that I did that, and for the time of it. I have watched that video back, and I see a pretty troubled man there. And that's because I was, at the time. I was not in a good place. I knew I kind of wasn't in a great place at the time. Arranging for that game happened like pretty quick before the game happened, and I kind of wanted to say no because I wasn't quite in the right mindset, but we were very short on time. I was like, look, let's just get in and get the game done, and then it's done, dusted. I don't need to worry about it too much. But I should have said no, but I didn't. Now, this is not technically the first public thing that's come out for this. A few days after the game happened, Cheesable did upload a video of the match. I have never watched this video. I don't want to watch the video. I have no idea what the comments on that may or may not say. I would hope that there is a mix of some folks, you know, saying obviously what I should have done wasn't right. You know, and obviously I think it's in the description, it was noted that I had apologized for it. And there's probably some people that think I'm the complete fucking worst. And again, I think both of them have probably got their own points. It was brought to my attention, however, that I think a day or two after the video came out that the thumbnail had changed. I wonder if that might have been viewer intervention, maybe, because the first one certainly wasn't very flattering, and I didn't know anything about the fact the video was going to go up at all. Just a very quick aside, I would have suggested that maybe, given the nature of what happened, it might be nice just to ask and see, is it okay if we upload this, rather than just kind of doing it. But whatever else, what's happened has happened. It's done. I can't change what happened. And now I have to live with the consequences of that, which I do. So you might be wondering and asking why it is I'm bringing this up now, of all time. It's been about a month or so since it happened. I've needed the time to kind of think and mull over about everything. What led up to it happening, the actual event, and the immediacy afterwards. Do I regret what happened? Of course I fucking do. There's not a day that's gone by, especially when I'm playing the game, where I don't think back to it and regret the choice that I made. I look back at myself in that apology video, and I was not in a good place. And I think that's something that people do forget about a lot. It's especially in the UK, it's something that's trying to be more aware of. Like, my mental health there was just gone. I think you've got to be in a pretty bad spot to kind of do something like that, really. It's not out of maliciousness. It's not out of an intent to, because I hate the other players in the game, something like that. No, I was just, I was in a really, really bad place. And, of course, I horribly regret what happened. I wish it never happened and everything like that. But, again, it's done. I can't take that back. And I now have to live with that. And I have to pay the price for that decision. Whether I was really that conscious of what the heck I was doing at the time or not. I realised the damage that it incurred. Not just to the match, but the people that were playing in the game, the competition as a whole, and just as a wider community, even if not a lot of you folks particularly knew about it. I highly regret it, and I wish I'd never done it. Maybe there are some folks who think I'm just a complete fucking scumbag, and that I should have no part of this community at all and should get the hell out of here. And that, me going and putting myself on camera to apologise apparently isn't enough. Maybe so. That's the way it has to be, I guess. One thing I've learnt in life is that you can't please everyone. You can try and do what you can, but you can't. But what I want to do is I want to use as an example of not being selfish, because that's what I was. I was incredibly selfish in that match. When I took the course I did, even though I was not in a good place, it was wrong, and I'm never going to dispute that. And now I have to pay the penance, which is a price that I'm trying to pay as best as I can. It's why I'm putting a lot of effort into the upcoming tournament, with playing the games on stream and covering Paul Denner's design diary and stuff like that. If offering forgiveness is not enough, then the only thing I can do is to try to produce more for the community, and try and make myself a better person. There's not really anything else I can really do. So I would hope that the example of what happened in that match is one that can be put down and said, this is what happens when you err, and so that other people don't follow that path. And I hope that it's of use. I can't veer too much else, really, truth be told, but it is, it's a weight that I've had on my shoulders since it happened, and all I can do is hope that some people are willing to give a second chance. That was my insinuation from the time, I don't get that much of an impression of that anymore. And I think the other issue of this, and one of the reasons I want to bring this up, is this then it ties back into this whole kind of inclusivity, exclusivity thing. One thing I remember talking about in the apology video was that I felt incredibly isolated. And I say that with reason, because that's just kind of how I felt at the time, and that's still how I feel at times. One of the downsides of when a community expands in growth is that you start getting little pockets and cliques appearing here, there, and everywhere. And it's happened the same in this game like anything else. I know that because a lot of the more regular names, you don't see him playing overall LFGs, you don't see him commenting in depth or on hidden assets. They're all on their own server or servers, talking about their own stuff. And I know that's a thing because it's how it works. Have I ever been asked about it or included in that before this incident happened? No. Am I sitting here expecting a red carpet? No, but I would have thought more often than not that you'd kind of want to at least try and include people. And since this happened a month ago, has anyone come to me after that video where I was clearly in a really bad spot and like saying, "Hey Shadow, like, you know, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Are you, you know, have you kind of learnt from the experience?" No, none of that. And this is something that needs to try and not happen. I fear we're at a situation with everything going on that the community is in a bit of danger of fragmenting itself. And that will be the death of this, if that was to happen. And this needs to be avoided at all costs. I can't sit here, maybe I'm not an arbiter for this, maybe I'm no longer qualified to cast judgment on any of these things because of what I did, you know, and you could make that argument. But what we have here is really cool and really special, and it's in danger of getting seriously fucked up. And it's like a lot of things, if people don't look after stuff and constantly tend to it, things fragment and fall away. So I'm rambling a little bit here. I accept that, and I know that. I'll try and bring this to a close. I think what I'm just trying to say in closing is that people need to be a lot more mindful of those around them and realize that their actions have much larger consequences than the immediacy of it. Not even going by my example. You know, in a game where, like, you know, you're kind of like pinging someone to like, "Can you please hurry up? You know, this is a game. You know, we've got timers," that sort of thing. That pisses you off. That pisses them off. They then will eventually talk to someone about what happened to them, and that pisses them off. And then it happens again, and then people start getting reported, and then it gets he says, and people start bitching. And it's a complete death spiral. And it would be the absolute worst if that happened. I'm not here to say that ranked games are a cause of it, but they are certainly starting to develop symptoms. If you're going to play ranked, fine, but you can't treat people like this. And you can take it from myself that you got to do better by those around you. And yeah, hopefully what happened to me, what I did, can be an example to help other people from straying from that path. And that's about the best I can really make of the situation, because of that it was pretty fucked. So thank you for listening to this. I'll leave the comment section open for your thoughts and feelings on everything. If anyone did comment in Cheeseball's video specifically about like myself, I'm sorry I didn't read it, but it's not an episode of my life that I want to particularly repeat. And I feel like by doing this open video and just talking about it and getting it out there, so people can form their own opinions, like, it's a weight off my shoulders, and I can try and move ahead. Focus on the Imperium Cup, focus on future competitions, focus on future projects, not put CJ in as much shit as I've probably put him over the past few weeks, even though he has you know, he's very kindly supported me. Yeah, he didn't have to. And I really fucking appreciate it, man. So, thank you for watching. And I'll see you in happier times.